Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small,
Well, hey there. Welcome, my fabulous listener. We are up to episode 206 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really do appreciate you making my podcast one of them. If you are enjoying this podcast, and I would love to make this a two-way conversation between us, if you could take a screenshot of the episode you're listening to it, share it on your socials and tag me, that would be epic. I would be very, very thankful for that. And if you're wondering, if you're listening along and you want to know where the show notes for this episode are, you can head to my website at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/206. But before we get started on today's episode, how did you go with last week's episode 205? If you didn't listen to that one, then when you finish listening here, slip back and listen to that for even more Small Business Made Simple gold, I should say. I was talking about the POEM marketing strategy method in that episode. So it's a really good one to listen to, especially if you want to get a little bit clearer on what your overall marketing strategy should look like. But onwards and upwards onto today's episode. Today's episode is one of my favorite subjects, community, because building a community is a marketing strategy. It's a longevity marketing strategy, and frankly, it's not something you can ignore any longer as a small business owner. If most of your content you share on social media, or most of your marketing content via email marketing or paid ads or TV or radio is buy this, then that content you are creating is sales content. And when you think about community building, we need less sales content, more community building content. Yes, absolutely. As a business owner, you do need sales, but what you need more than sales is a community of people who know, like, and trust you, who come for the content, but stay for the community, and who buy from you over and over again and refer business to you consistently and constantly. So hunting for the next buyer rather than taking care of the buyer you already have is one of the biggest mistakes that I see in business. We need to stop focusing on the number of likes and the number of follows we have, and start thinking again, community building. Because wouldn't business be easier or simpler if you had a community of buyers, if you had a community of people who referred business to you, people who loved what you did and loved what you do, and so much so that they want to tell everybody in their world? Of course it would. So let's talk a little bit more about community building in this episode, answering one of the first questions I get when I talk about building communities. Well, Jen, how do you actually build a community? So firstly, my first thing to say with community building is you need to show up. Every community needs a leader, so you need to ensure that you are there to lead your community. You need to have a platform, of course, for the community to grow and to hang out with you and other like-minded people. Most obviously, I guess what comes to mind when I talk about, a platform is a Facebook group, but it might be a Mighty Networks group, or it might be a Messenger chat group, or it could be an Instagram group, or it could be a face-to-face group, or even a Zoom group. But you do need to find somewhere where your community can not only hang out and be with you, but the idea of the community is they get to know other people and they get to communicate with other people. These things can be absolutely magical. But the one thing about community as a business owner, the community you need to be building is making sure that your community is customer centric, that the customer is the hero of that community. This isn't a fan club for you, although it might seem like it occasionally, but that's not the reason why you're building it. It's actually about them. The content is focused on them. The marketing is focused on them. Everything is customer centric because you want these people to feel heard, loved, and importantly, important in your world. Communities also need a purpose, a higher purpose than just buying something you have to sell. So my question to you today is, what is the purpose of your business other than to make money? Like, obviously in business, we are in business to make money. Let's not make bones about that. But what's the higher purpose of your business? If you don't know the answer to that question right now, then write it down and come back to it. Sit with it. You have one. 2000%. I believe that you have one. And also, if you can't think of it, remember sometimes the obvious sits in plain sight. So think about, what is it that is your higher purpose in your business? I have built many communities. I guess my biggest being my online Facebook group called Buy From a Bush Business, which I think has 376,000 people in it. But I've also grown some smaller ones, which are just fabulous, like my Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. But also I have communities offline as well that I'm focused on, such as my Women in Business Hub and my Women in Business networking groups that I have. All my communities are customer centric and built on a collective purpose, such as Buy From a Bush Business obviously has the purpose of supporting small rural and regional businesses through sales of products and keeping more money in communities. And rather than people donating to charities, they actually buy from the person who's selling the product, which then automatically puts more money in the pocket of those who need it the most, and then and back into their community, of course. Like-Minded Business Owners, my other Facebook group, is where people that are like-minded hang out. They can sell things in there. There's definitely opportunities to sell things, but it's more about that collective mindset and that collective knowledge where people are helping people. But I can tell you that building communities is hard work and perhaps isn't always just coming up roses. I've learned some pretty valuable lessons through building communities. Some of them I thought I'd share with you today because if you've built a community, you may, might get the head nod test out of you. Oh, yes, Jen, I totally understand. And that happened to me too. But also, if you haven't thought about building communities, I wanted to let you know on some of the things that you might need to look out for. So my first lesson that I've learned is the journey isn't always easy and it's not always smooth. If you are at the head of a community, you think of any person who is a leader of a community, whether it be a big community or a small community, you have fans and then you have one, two, or maybe a few people that sit outside that are your biggest critics. So it's not always easy, it's not always smooth, and not everybody should belong to your community. So you will find some bumps in the road. For me personally, especially when it comes to building my big online community, the Buy From a Bush Business Facebook group, which is huge, I could actually hand on heart say I've seen the very best and the very worst of humanity through that group. There are so many amazing people out there in the world, and there are some dogs, some really big dogs. So that's been my experience through building a really large community. I've learnt of course, so much about myself. For example, I've learnt, and probably not even learnt, probably have known most of my life, that I'm a people pleaser. I'm too nice, I'm too trusting, and I don't speak up for myself enough. So learning those lessons, I also recognise when I'm doing it and try and change my way. I've also learnt to trust my gut. If it doesn't feel right, it's just not right, and there needs to be a decision made on that. The other really big lesson that I've learned, which is quite contradictory to one of my earlier podcast episodes where I said yes for a year, is no is an okay response, and I need to use it more. Saying no to people is okay. You are the leader of your community, and no is okay to say. I've learned also building communities that you need to give more, but you also need to know when to stop giving more, because some people will always expect more. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about giving for free. So, give, ask is my motto in business. So, give upfront value before you ask for the sale. But you've also got to recognize that some people will continue to always want more for free. And that doesn't sit well when you are trying to build a business around your community. Two more things that I've learnt that I was going to share with you today is no one knows your journey like you, and you shouldn't expect them to. So no one knows what you've been through. And really, I would say that in a lot of cases, frankly, people don't care. People look at where they are now, and really, when you try to explain to someone, how hard something's been for you, or how difficult something's been for you, or what you've been trying to do, depending on the community you've built and depending on the person, they're kind of like, okay, well, what's next type of thing, or what's in it for me, or, how can I support you today, rather than listening to how I could have supported you 6 months ago. So no one knows your journey like you. Don't expect them to. But remember, on the other side of that coin is that storytelling is such a powerful way of attracting people into your communities. So don't forget to understand that, I guess, that storytelling can be so powerful, but know that no one's going to know your journey like you. The last thing that I'm going to share with you around lessons that I've learned as far as building communities go is marketing involves being generous and kind, and also involves marketing the brand, the community, and you as the leader. You've got to market all three. So marketing is very much around being generous and kind, and we go back to, what's the higher purpose for the group or for the community other than just making money. But it also, you need to make sure you're marketing the brand, the community itself, and you are marketing yourself as the leader of that community. So things that it takes to build a successful community. These are just a few things that I would say it has taken to build a successful community. If you have others, then I would really love for you to jump into the Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group and share your journey of community building, your lessons, and maybe what you think it takes to build a successful community. But these are my few points. Obviously, it takes a leader. And not only a leader, but a leader who's willing to grow and learn with people as they go along, with the community as it grows as well. You need a common purpose or common values. Again, you will attract people who are attracted to your business values, to your community values. Strict community rules. Strict as in everyone has to comply, because I can tell you, especially in my really big Facebook group, no, actually that's not true, in both my Facebook groups and even in my communities offline as well, if people see a crack, if people see that they can backdoor a rule or see a little crack in the rule, they will make it a river. They will try their best to get around that rule if it doesn't suit them. So you've got to have really strict rules and really strict values. And that, I guess for me, that's where I've always gone to. When I come up against someone who is perhaps, telling me that the rule doesn't apply to them, or that it shouldn't apply to them, or it's a silly rule, I go back to my values. What's the business value, or what's my values? And does that rule adhere to those values? If the answer is yes, the rule stays. If the rule does not, doesn't have anything in common with my values, then maybe it needs to be changed. Sometimes a leader needs a team. So something to think about. You can't always just lead a community all by yourself. Sometimes you need a team, and some of the best team people will come from your community because they're already in it. They already love it, and they want to see it continue to grow. Super fans is another really great thing you'll get from a successful community. You will have people who know, like, and trust you, who are your greatest advocates, who, love everything you do and spread the word on what it is that you have to offer, and invite their people into your community as well. Something else that makes a successful community is it's got to be easy and convenient to access the community. Now, I say that because I belong to a couple of different communities that aren't Facebook groups, and I honestly find it that I have to rise to go into those communities to keep being a part of those communities. Now, you know that if you've been listening to my podcast for any length of time, that I'm not a huge advocate of building empires on Crown land, such as building really big Facebook communities, because we don't own Facebook. We have no control really over those communities. But you also need to make it easy and convenient. So if you're having a community such as on another platform, you've got to make sure your people are willing to go there, or that your people are already there, because otherwise it just becomes too arduous to belong to that community. Another thing that makes a successful community is that members feel like they have some sort of ownership over the community. They feel like they belong. It is such a human desire to belong to something. So you need to make the community feel like they have some ownership over this community, and that they feel like they belong to that community. And of course, lastly, it needs to be a safe space built on mutual trust. You need to make sure that your community members feel safe in there, and that can actually come back to making sure that you have strict rules in place, so that it still stays a trustful place. And finally, let's have a chat about the benefits of actually having a community. I've already listed some, but here's some more ideas for you to mull over as you think to yourself, should I be building a community? Should I be listening to Jen about this? How can I, enhance the community that I've already got, etc., etc. So some benefits are you can become the go-to person or business and be seen as a leader in that space. You create brand ambassadors, people who know, like, and trust you and are willing to tell others about you, and perhaps become raving fans and raving referrers into your business. You can get direct lines of feedback on your business. So if you want to launch some new products or new services, then you've kind of got this trusted community where you can do a soft launch into and get feedback before you put it out to the world. And not to mention, then it makes them feel super special and, part of your community because they got first dibs at the new thing. As your community builds, you will see a direct correlation to the increase in your revenue. And you can respond to markets swiftly, like market changes quicker, because you can see the trends coming through in your community. If you have a community of your buyers, then you can start to see the trends of, what they're doing, whether they are doing more online shopping, less online shopping, whether they are, buying things in pink now as opposed to orange last season, or whether they want short courses or long courses, or whether they're buying things worth $3,000 as opposed to $200. If you watch your community, you can definitely see the market shift. And of course, being a small business owner, you can tailor offerings to that and be ahead of other people who don't have communities. And of course, with communities, you will have increased website traffic, which, I guess might not seem huge, but the more traffic you can get to your website, maybe the higher you can rank with Google, and then perhaps come up better in organic searches, so on and so on and so on. So they're just a few benefits. Some of the biggest benefits will come from you, from within you, really. The personal growth, the personal leadership growth will be huge. With community building and embracing a community, remember 2 things. So if you're going to take 2 things away from this podcast, take these 2. Remember to show up. Again, every community needs a leader, and always lead with value first. Always lead with value first. So if you sit back and think about your business model, you probably already have a community. You just aren't thinking about the community in that way, or you're not recognizing that you have one, or perhaps you do have a community and this episode has been really great for you to really, shine a light back on that community. So my hope with this podcast is that you will now start thinking community over sales, especially when it comes to your content, and start embracing community as a strategy for your business. I'd love to chat more about community in my community, Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. If you're not a member of there, then head in there, and I'd love you to tell me your thoughts around community. But otherwise, that's it for another episode of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'd love you to come into my Facebook community and continue the chat there, just like I said. Otherwise, I will see you next week on episode 207. But in the meantime, if we're not already hanging out on social, then come and find me on Instagram, Facebook, or of course on LinkedIn. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peep, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.